Hello everybody, I just want to go through what you need to do to score highly on the 30 marker. In class we've given you a good structure of how to answer the question to make sure that you get a decent breadth of knowledge and understanding, but what do you need to do to get into the top band? Okay. So just to make sure that you show good AO1 of a range of theoretical explanations of a student's pupil, home background and family patterns. Okay, so you need to show a good range of theoretical explanations. So in your answer, just make sure that you are outlining cultural deprivation and break it down into the component parts. So have a paragraph which is talking about speech codes, referring to Bernstein, and compare middle and working class. Then you can talk about the working class attitudes and values, their attitudes towards school, having high expectations or low expectations. You can even bring in Sugarman's for working class values, and how does that give a bit of a barrier to working class success. You can also talk about intellectual and the cognitive development through knowing to buy certain toys for their children, which will stimulate thinking skills. This is combined with the way that middle class speak to their children as well. They're always making them think analytically rather than descriptively. So both the language and the intellectual development will actually go together through the toys that they're playing and their interactions. And also this lack of cultural capital. You might want to mention Bordeaux and what do the working class not possess that the middle class do possess. So that's the cultural deprivation part, and just make sure that you do reference about material deprivation as well. There was a little bit of a hint to that in the item about not being able to buy certain toys. So talk about living in poverty, bad diet, talk about housing conditions, living in poor accommodation, overcrowded and things like that. So you've got a good range of AO1, then make sure that you are applying it from the item and make sure that you link back to the question. So I want you to use the wording from the question. So once you've done, say, for example, you've talked about lack of speech code, so you're saying that the working class speak it in a restricted speech code. This is showing that the way that the family speaks to them, the family background, is linking into why working class are achieving. So you're using the words from the question. Now, what I want you to do to get the AO3, to get into the top band, you've got to show really good complex analysis and evaluation as well. And just a few ways that you can develop this analysis in this answer. Start by comparing the backgrounds of middle class and working class. So just by making that comparison, you are showing analysis. So show what do the working class lack, but then flip it on its head and say, well, this is what the middle class have, which gives them an advantage. So this is explaining why working class fail and middle class achieve. So to make a bit of comparison there. Also show how the external factors that you've gone through, the cultural deprivation, language, intellectual development, material deprivation, how does that actually lead to teacher labelling and internal factors? We shouldn't just be looking at the external. So for example, you can then say, if a child speaks in a restricted speech code, well, when the kid gets into school, they don't understand the teacher, so that leads them to be failing. Likewise, you could actually talk about how cultural deprivation is a myth. It's victim blaming, which is keddy, but it's actually the school that's at fault, because when these kids get into school, the school devalues the working class culture. So the middle class, who have cultural capital according to Bordeaux, they have the values which actually the schools value, and that means that they do well. So you can make that comparison there. The same with material factors as well. Discuss things like diet, resources, lack of good accommodation or whatever. This means that they're more likely to be absent from school. This shows that they're unprepared. They lack concentration in lessons. They're often tired, and then you can actually say they don't appear to be the ideal pupil according to Becker, which is an internal factor. So is it just the fact that they are in poverty, or is it the fact that the teachers, once they get into school, they're being labelled as being not prepared because of the home background? So then you could actually discuss whether it is just external factors of family and home background, or is it the school that's at fault, and make that decision. You could actually compare the material and the cultural as well. Which has the bigger impact? Is it the fact that they live in poverty that causes underachievement, or is it the fact that they are culturally deprived? Which one? It can You could conclude by saying that it can't just be poverty, because Feinstein argued parents' motivation and education explains why some working class achieve despite living in poverty. So you've got a little bit of a difference there. Make sure that you mention that. So once you get to the end of the answer, just make sure that you are concluding and be saying that it's not just home background or family attitudes. We need to actually explore in this answer, and you needed to explore in this answer, that these are interacting, the factors are interacting with each other, but also they're interacting with the in-school factors as well. Whitty and Mortimer, they actually conclude, they decide, or they recommend that it's material deprivation which is the biggest problem, that if you tackle child poverty, that will be the most effective way to boost achievement. Okay, that's just one judgment that you could put into your conclusion. Okay, so hopefully this short little bit of a podcast will just give you a nice little overview about some of the things that you need to be popping in to get yourself right into that top band. Okay, but it does say on the mark scheme to show the interrelatedness, discuss or compare the different factors, and come to some sort of judgment to which has the biggest impact. Okay, so thank you for listening, and good luck for your assessment on Friday.